Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Stay on Track. I'm Josh, and I'm joined this week by Dexter.
Hi. Unfortunately, Rob cannot join us this week because we have to do some restructuring, and unfortunately, he's no longer going to be a part of this podcast.
Yeah, that's not quite true. He's on holiday and does not have sufficient Wi-Fi. So this week, we are answering the question: why does everyone hate Iron Man 3?
And then also do some discussion about Suicide Squad as well. Okay, let's start with Iron Man 3. I mean, firstly, both you and I are actually fans of Iron Man 3,
So
aren't we?
there's 20 MCU films out there, and it's number 11 in my rankings.
Oh yeah, I haven't updated my list actually.
Well, so obviously it's not at the top, but I don't think it's by any means a bad film. And like just because there are better films in the MCU, I don't think that means that it's a bad film.
Yeah, I would agree. It's actually a pretty decent film, and despite the fact that it's in number 11 on your list of 20, it's probably one of the MCU films that I've actually rewatched the most, which I think should means that it warrants and deserves a bit more credit because of its rewatchability. Because oftentimes, many films you just watch it once and you're like, I'm done.
Exactly. When
Like Captain America: The First Avenger.
When I first watched Iron Man 3, I wasn't really following the MCU much. I think I was just watching it because I was a fan of sort of a fan of the Iron Man films, and I didn't really know what to make of it. I don't even remember what I actually thought of it, but I remember reading a lot of stuff online and seeing something like a CinemaSins video about how awful it was, and so I kind of had this impression that Iron Man 3 was the worst Iron Man film and it ruined the trilogy. But going back and rewatching all of them a few years later, I actually realised it's by no means the worst. I think Iron Man 2
Oh,
is
that's
the
interesting,
worst.
actually. I was about to ask you that after you brought it up. Do you think Iron Man 2 is better than Iron Man 3?
No.
Actually, no, that's a very stupid question because you just answered that. Why do you think Iron Man 3 is better than Iron Man 2?
I think, well, we can get into this more later, but I think like my whole case for Iron Man 3, it has its problems, granted, which we will get into now.
Yeah.
I think it was a good way to end the Iron Man trilogy, the first trilogy of the MCU. I thought it was a satisfying way to end. But anyway, why does everyone hate Iron Man 3?
Okay, well, you got some of your points, and I've got some other points as well.
Kind of a big place to start, I think, is the Mandarin.
Yep.
And what the film did to the Mandarin, which I think was a problem, especially among the comic book fans who watched the film. Obviously, probably quite a big following of the MCU, and I think that like obviously the Mandarin in the comics. I haven't read that many comics, and I've mostly read comics from the '60s. But the Mandarin that I've seen is a formidable foe of Iron Man. It's like his arch nemesis, effectively.
Yeah, it would be arch nemesis. Yeah, it's like the Joker equivalent to Batman for Iron Man.
Exactly.
I think one of the reasons why people don't like the Mandarin twist it's not necessarily because they made a change, because the MCU have made some changes and stuff, such as in Captain America: Civil War, they've took some liberties with the storyline because it's a very famous storyline. Also, that in the comics, Jarvis is actually like a human butler, but obviously in the first Iron Man film and throughout, they've made Jarvis into an electronic voice butler person. So those are changes which I don't actually. Firstly, to be fair, in the first Iron Man film, it was like it didn't really have anything to. It was kind of just a winning film. So even if they made any changes, liberties, no one would really care that much. But I think one of the reasons why this twist hurt comic book fans so much more was.
Well, I think it's much bigger than the other sort of changes that they've done. I mean, of it, like Jarvis being a computer system isn't that big a change. Like he's just there, but this was taking Iron Man's biggest foe and turning it into effectively a joke.
Yeah, true. Actually, did you find it funny though when you first?
Well, this is the thing, because like obviously
I enjoyed it.
Exactly. I think like if you're a comic book fan and you're expecting the Mandarin to be someone terrifying and powerful, and then he's just this drunk actor, you're not going to be happy. And I can understand that's one of the big reasons that people don't like the film. But actually, it is quite a funny twist if you take away the comic book background.
Yeah, I enjoyed the twist when I first watched. Actually, every time I watched it, I still find it quite funny.
It's funny, yeah.
However, as I've grown older with it, I have also thought I've been more upset with how much of a letdown it was. Also because Ben Kingsley, and this would have been a perfect real Mandarin. Like the trailers all like made him out to be, and up until the twist.
Well, he's scary in the film. You know, the sort of the videos that he puts on the TV. They are, you know, they're scary.
Yeah, it is very intimidating, and I think that's part of the reason why people don't like the twist so much, is because Ben Kingsley it was just basically just wasted potential, because he would have been a really good Mandarin. As in, Ben Kingsley is also true. He's good in it.
But I also think, yeah, like even as the drunk Trevor Slattery, he is quite funny, and it's a good performance from him.
Yeah, I'd agree.
To be able to do both.
And in place of Ben Kingsley's Mandarin, we later find out that the true antagonist of the film is, what was his name again? Killian.
Aldrich Killian, yeah.
Aldrich Killian.
And this is, I think this comes into another problem with the film.
Yeah.
Or why people don't like it, which is that, fine, you take the Mandarin twist, you remove who everyone thought to be the main villain, but you kind of then don't have a sufficient replacement in Killian. He's not a very good villain.
Yeah, he's not as he has the audacity to say within the film that he's the Mandarin. And actually, you know, in that Marvel one shot, All Hail the King, don't they actually say that he is?
So that revealed, that the Mandarin, the real Mandarin, is out there.
Yeah, do you think they actually did that just because the twist was received so badly?
I think whether or not it's canon, they're not going to bring in the real Mandarin to the MCU. His time's gone. Yeah, there's no more. There's going to be no more Iron Man films. I can't see them doing that.
Actually, I know.
But yeah, so then you've got Killian, who's the kind of glowing, being generic bad guy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's the worst part. There's the villains, because ultimately the Ben King Mandarin isn't really a villain because he's not, because he doesn't really do anything. All of the villains don't really have any real motivations. They're all very poorly done. As in, out of all the MCU villains, Aldrich Killian, in my opinion, is
he's just one of your. He comes under your, like, dare I say, Malekiths. Probably not quite that bad.
I mean, I wouldn't be able to confirm or deny because I haven't actually finished watching For the Dark World.
Well, you should go and do that, because then you could understand what I mean when I say he's a bit of a Malekith. I don't know. I suppose he has a bit more.
Quite a bit of it.
I feel like they tried. This is the thing. They tried with, like, the scene in Switzerland at the start of the movie.
Oh yeah, I was about to say,
to give him some sort of background.
Yeah, so are his motivations purely just Tony was horrible to him back in 1999, and he did all of it? That's not a sufficient motivation.
Yeah.
In Black Panther, I don't think it's a particularly good film at all. It's, again, one of the weaker films, in my opinion.
Really?
And vastly overrated. But the Killmonger motivations, and he makes him one of the best villains in the MCU. If not tied best with Thanos in Avengers: Infinity War. Again, maybe I haven't really given that much thought. So
that's the thing, because those villains have motivations. They spend time fleshing out a sort of backstory, even in the small space of one film.
Yeah,
and they're able to sort of show us, you know, with both Thanos and Killmonger, you can have some sympathy to an extent, and that's what makes them among the best villains in the MCU.
You're right. I think ultimately Aldrich Killian doesn't really have an identity within the film.
He suffers from what everyone, you know, the sort of Marvel villain problem, which they have been improving in the last few years.
Yeah.
Which is that it's just these sort of very one-dimensional, generic bad guys.
A bit like Yellow Jacket in.
Yes, Ant-Man. Yellow Jacket is another one. He's just got these ridiculous scenes.
His motivations are he goes a bit crazy.
He kills the goat. Just to show that he's a generic bad guy.
Yeah, exactly. To be fair, I was like, oh my god, he killed the goat. But I was still thinking, and they tried to introduce the fact that he had gone slowly insane by being in close contact with the Pym particles for so long, which again was a bit weird. And he just wanted to make money. Actually, who just is a better villain, Yellow Jacket or Aldrich Killian? I'll say Yellow Jacket.
A
Purely
better
because of
villain,
suit. Yeah.
man. That's a tough choice.
I mean, it's
They're
like,
both pretty bad villains.
yeah, they're both pretty terrible and subpar.
Anyway, back to Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
That final fight at the end with Killian.
Oh yeah.
This is
disappointing.
I mean, effectively, what we can see from this is that kind of the film goes wrong in the third act.
I think after the twist is when
It all
everything
kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the final fight, I think Marvel missed out on a huge opportunity, which was that
I agree.
Pepper falls into the fire, and they should have killed her off.
Yeah, I think yeah, I agree, and I think lots of people agree. Just because one, she's not that likable character within the MCU, and I also think that they don't actually really know what to do with Gwyneth Paltrow's character because
she sort of randomly she was gone for Civil War, and
then
she kind of randomly came back at the end of Homecoming and in Infinity War as well.
Exactly, it really made no sense.
And yeah, she doesn't need. I mean, who knows? Maybe we're wrong, and she's going to be in the rescue suit in.
No, she 100% is. As in, like the rescue suit is designed for her. I mean, however, it is.
But the question is that necessary for the plot? We'll see. But
yeah, we will.
I still think that they should have
ultimately useless.
They should have killed her off just to bring some stakes, because that's another problem with the MCU that people find in general, which is
no one's died.
There aren't stakes exactly.
Exactly.
Or whoever does die, it's just a mind like Quicksilver, but no one.
Yeah, exactly. Really Quicksilver's the one that they go to. Oh, but he died, but no one really cared about him. Actually,
it's not.
It was quite a touching death. They did the best they could.
It was a touching death, but it wasn't. He was introduced in that movie.
Exactly. Yeah.
Technically, he was introduced in Winter Soldier in the post-credit scene.
Post-credit scene. Okay, we're getting a nitty-gritty, Josh. But I think Pepper, just like with Rhodey in Captain America: Civil War, would again.
Yeah. No, I agree about Rhodes as well. I completely agree about Rhodes. Also, on a slight gripe about that scene, that they included that in the trailer for Civil War.
Yeah, true. I remember that.
It was really stupid.
A lot of people were speculating that while they include such an important scene in the film, and because everyone overanalyzes, we all thought that they were double bluffing us, but they weren't. He just I'm not happy about that, but whatever.
Anyway. So yeah, I think also kind of Pepper becoming a superhero, having not died and actually being the one to take out Killian. It was just that whole scene was just a bit. It was just a bit messy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I mind it as much, but that's just because I didn't care really about the conflict anymore. Because obviously,
it all just kind of felt quite rushed, and it's not the best kind of end battle scene that we've seen in the MCU.
As in, with Avengers Endgame, a lot of people are speculating who's going to be the one to deal with the final blow. A lot of people want it to be Tony because he had his one-on-one with him in Infinity War. A lot of people want it to be Thor as well. But with who destroys or kills Aldrich Killian, I didn't really care about what was going on.
Yeah.
I also think that whole we said that the Pepper not dying was a wasted opportunity. I also think that whole final battle was also a wasted opportunity as well. In that prior to Iron Man 3 and Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2, I'm pretty sure they had maybe 3 armors in each of the films, and they all stood out pretty well. As with the Mark 1, built in the cave. You have the suitcase arm in Iron Man 2. In Iron Man 3, they then suddenly introduced 42, 43 plus armors. And they're all given very minimal screen time.
Yeah, so I think they should have put them all in the scene, but given the most interesting ones more.
Yeah, exactly. And then they just had
because each of them kind of got one short moment.
Yeah, got one moment to do something, and then the next moment would just be them getting ripped apart, which I just thought was just a complete waste.
But yeah, I mean, I think those 3 problems, like the Pepper problem, Killian, and the Mandarin, those are probably the 3 main reasons.
Yeah, the 3 main problems. I'd also say that it's kind of from how the films then carry on regarding Iron Man's storyline in the next few films. I say a lot of why people probably don't like it, or at least why I don't really like a gripe, which I do like it, but a gripe which I'd have with it is that it does seem quite inconsequential in that Tony, in his very dramatic gesture at the end, destroys all of his armors. But then we find out in Age of Ultron and Civil War. Actually, wait, Age of Ultron, Civil War and stuff, that he just carried on being Iron Man. I didn't really understand what they were doing.
I think they actually, they did explain like what happened in Civil War. Like, I think Tony explains to.
Oh yeah, he said that he wanted to give it up, but he couldn't.
But then Hydra came around and he had to pick the mantle back up. But I think in terms of that kind of big gesture at the end to remove his chest piece, I think that's sort of part of this satisfying ending that I was talking about earlier. It was a nice way to end the trilogy with him at least wanting to give up being Iron Man, even if he can't. It just felt like a satisfying conclusion.
Yeah, because that leads us to one of the good points of the film, and because this is the first Iron Man film to take place after the events of the Avengers, and largely one of the main plot threads is how Tony deals with the repercussions of what he had seen in the Avengers, because obviously he, out of all of aside from Black Widow and Hawkeye, who are basically nothing, he's the normal guy. His origin's that of like a regular person in terms of his life experiences. Now, like fast forward 4 or 5 years later from the plot of the first Iron Man film, from at first fights terrorists to then blowing up that Chitauri or this kind of stuff. So it's understandable that he'd have this reaction.
Yeah, and you really do see like the PTSD and that. I think it's a good setup there. You then get the entertaining post-credit scene as well.
Post-credit scene.
Him having like a session with Bruce.
Oh yeah.
He's just like telling his life story.
Oh, that was
quite
good,
funny.
Actually. Yeah, that was always nice.
But I also like kind of the PTSD does carry over.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
I mean, it has actually carried all the way through.
Yeah, to Infinity War. In Infinity War, he does say
he's the reason he's making
8 years.
Exactly. Yeah. So you start off with Iron Man 3, where he's making all these suits because he's afraid of what's out there and he's got PTSD and he just needs to be doing something. But then you carry that into Age of Ultron, and the reason that he created Ultron in the first place was to protect the world from another Chitauri invasion or equivalent. And then he does the nanotech and all of this, and he says at the start of Infinity War, he says, this is it. This is like
in the scene where Bruce Banner talks to him about
in the Sanctum.
You hear him saying, "This is it." And it's actually because we've spoken about this before. Aren't we in agreement about how we believe that Tony Stark is not favorite? I mean, I don't know if he's your favorite. I think he's my favorite, but he's the most well-developed character.
Definitely, yeah. I have a special place for Cap in my heart, but yeah, he is definitely Tony is the best developed character.
As in the cockiness is all just, it's not even, as in Infinity War, compared to Iron Man 1 or Iron Man 2, he has really like a completely different character.
Evolved, yeah.
As in he still makes snarky jokes, but he's not a cocky person anymore. He takes it very seriously.
It sort of seems like a kind of almost insecurity now, these cocky jokes, rather than, as you say, just being snarky. And I think, that kind of, the next step of that evolution started in Iron Man 3. With this PTSD. So I think that was one of the really strong points of the film. Him dealing with that. And the section of the film where he's in that small town. Tennessee, yeah. Rose Hill, Tennessee.
Yeah.
With the kid, like I quite enjoyed that bit of the movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed the whole premise of him fighting with the fact that he wants to be Iron Man, as it's a bit like how in Spider-Man: Homecoming, one of the worst films of the MCU, he says, "If you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have them." And again, that's when you see a completely different side of him, and that it carries on from Iron Man 3. And I think that as controversial as the Mandarin twist was, it's probably one of the most important films for his own character arc.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that one of the reasons why, how we were talking about Iron Man 2 earlier, I didn't like that in Iron Man. It seemed as though Tony Stark had learned his lesson when he said, "I shouldn't be alive unless it's for a reason." And then Iron Man 2, he just becomes just ridiculous buffoon again. Obviously, because he's dealing with mortality. But I like that Iron Man 3, he does learn or becomes a much more serious and better character, and that carries on. It has longevity, which the first couple of films didn't have.
Yeah, and I guess one last smaller point to add is about like why I enjoyed it. I mean, it's a funny film. It's I know a lot of people, I've read and seen a lot of things where people say, you know, it is a Shane Black film.
Yeah, I've read that as well.
And I don't know, have you seen Kiss Kiss Bang Bang?
I haven't actually.
As an example, or any other. Yeah, I mean, you can see that they're by the same person. But I enjoyed that. I think he's a funny guy.
So I also think that fundamentally, when you think about the MCU, and if you had to pin it on one actor, it would be Robert Downey Jr. And that people credit him for being like the godfather of the MCU. I don't think it's because he came first, primarily. I think that obviously plays a part, but it's just that he is just a very charismatic actor, and people enjoy seeing him on the screen. In that, as unfair as it may be, Robert Downey Jr. does propel the film in a much better direction. And say, if even if the two other strongest leads are Chris Evans, up to this point, Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth, if they had had a similarly poorly written film, it wouldn't be as entertaining to watch, just because.
Well, as we saw with Thor, as you didn't see, but as I saw with Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah, I'd wholeheartedly agree. You know, I did
And
watch.
I mean, to be honest, even the first Thor wasn't an amazing film.
It was bad. It was bad. I'd equate it to the modern day Aquaman. Even though again, another film which I haven't seen. But yeah, as
you can't go making these sweeping statements.
As in, Robert Downey Jr. was charismatic and loved from the very beginning, and I think and that's why the trilogy and this film was received quite well. As in, you know, people always say that Iron Man had the best first film, Captain America had the best second film, and Thor had the best third film. But
well,
by
I disagree with that massively, first of all. But
wait, what?
Well, I mean, Captain America also did have the best third film.
Okay, I'd also agree, but if you had to pick a highlight of,
but also I suppose that you can't really count Civil War as a Captain America film.
I know. Okay, Anthony Mackie was the one who kept saying it's like Avengers 2.5, like 100. Yeah. Avengers 3.5.
It is Avengers 2.5.
Yeah, true, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, fair enough.
I think that the henchman, because you know how there's in these films, there's normally a kind of side kind of villain, even like a villain that's behind everything. As in, for example, in Black Panther, there was Andy Serkis's character, Ulysses Claw, and then also Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger. That was good, and that Ulysses Claw is also a very good actor. I mean, no, not actor, good character. In the Winter Soldier, we had the Winter Soldier as the kind of footman, and then Robert Redford as the big bad reveal. Again, good. In this one, we had kind of a weird, not kind of indistinguished roles, of which the henchmen were all kind of boring. We had, there's that henchman that kind of explodes and he takes on the picture of it. His name's Savin or Sarvin. Yeah, he was bad. He was nothing.
Yeah, no, he was irrelevant. And then you had that woman as well.
We had Nameless Woman and this guy who both had firstly the powers of the abilities of the people with extremis are all vaguely defined. You know, they had that weird bit at the end when what's his name? Actually, what's his name now? I forgot his name. The real Mandarin. What's he called?
Killian.
I hate him so much, actually, just from this. Yeah, you know, when Killian suddenly just breathes fire.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
And then, kind of weirdly as well, and he I didn't understand what was going on. But yeah, that's another thing which I don't like about the film, and why the film suffers is ultimately the main villain and the side villain are both quite underwhelming. Actually, no. I'd agree with that, because I'm not counting Ben Kingsley's character as a villain at all, to be honest.
So, shall we move on?
Yeah, let's move
on. From I suppose, a film that everyone hates but actually isn't that bad, to a film that everyone hates, and to be honest, rightly so.
Actually, do you think people actually hate Iron Man 3? I think a lot of people have gripes with it, but I think a lot of people probably in similar boats to us. They think it's a wasted opportunity, but still.
I know there was a lot of kind of backlash when it came out, that I remember.
But yeah, so now we're going to move on to DC's Suicide Squad.
Funny enough, it is my least favorite movie of all time.
Oh yeah, no, you said this before.
I genuinely cannot think of a film that I would rather watch less than Suicide Squad. I've seen it twice.
No, okay. Yeah, okay. Firstly, it doesn't make any sense. Secondly, I would argue that despite the fact that it's a bad film, it's so bad that it's entertaining. It's not like a middling,
it's gone beyond entertaining for me. It was painful.
No, but would you rather watch Suicide Squad a third time, despite the fact that you really hate it, or would you rather watch The Dark World?
So I've seen The Dark World about 5 times. I always just rewatch some of them.
Actually, you know what? Now that we brought in this comparison, because I haven't watched Suicide Squad since leaving the cinema, and actually I forgot, when did it come out? Actually, Suicide Squad.
Summer 2016.
Summer 2016. Oh, okay. So I didn't think it was that bad.
Really?
As in, I probably, when I came out of the cinema, I think I actually liked it more than, as I had a more feeling of, oh, this is actually okay, as opposed to when I left the cinema watching Guardians of the Galaxy 1. Yeah. Actually, okay, and we might talk about Guardians of the Galaxy. We shouldn't do all these tangents.
Let's stay on track.
So in depth.
Name of our podcast.
Oh, Josh, say it. Go on, do it. Especially because the Toilet Suicide Squad as well.
I know.
Throw in our podcast then. Go on, do it.
Stay on track. Man, that is my least favorite. So that was there's an episode of Family Guy. This is a bit of a tangent. Where one of them breaks the fourth wall, and then they all just slowly turn their heads and stare at the camera. And to be honest, they might as well have just done that. When Will Smith goes so what are we, some kind of Suicide Squad? I if I hadn't paid for my ticket to the cinema, I would have got up and left at that point. Genuinely.
It was a bad line.
It was an awful line.
And to be honest, that's actually, when I was saying that, I kind of thought that in my head I would kind of come up with any saving grace to it. It's not. There's just nothing. There's no saving grace to that line at all. It really. Actually, another thing. Funny enough that we mentioned, or I mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy. Suicide Squad feels like a kind of we're trying to make a Guardians of the Galaxy equivalent, mostly from the soundtrack.
And it's funny that you say that, because I just felt like that was the film where DC stopped trying to be their own thing.
Yeah, because what were the films that come before that? Was it just Man of Steel?
So it was only Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, which were
both very dark in tone. You're right, actually. That represents.
And so Suicide Squad. I mean, in many respects, Suicide Squad tried to have the humor that Marvel has, and it didn't work, in my opinion. And even something as simple as, I think, back when DC started announcing all their DCEU films, they said, we will not do post-credit scenes because that's not our thing.
Yeah.
And then Suicide Squad, they do a post-credit scene.
Yeah, you're right. They really copped out. I remember in Man of Steel, I watched it in the cinema, and I did stay because it came out in 2013, so I was a wee boy. And I did stay towards the end of the credits, and then realized that there was no credit scene. But I respected that. I respected that they were going for a different thing.
That's the thing. I think that Marvel have built something so incredible and so unprecedented that the only DC will not be able to succeed by trying to copy it. The only way they could do that, and what they started to do. I mean, Batman v Superman had many problems, but at least it was its own thing.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
And the same with Man of Steel, although Man of Steel actually was not a bad film at all.
Man of Steel was a good.
But both those films
better than a lot of MCU films, or at least on par with. But as in Batman v Superman, Batman v Superman had a very dark tone as well. You're right that the Suicide Squad film was when they started making a change in tone.
It tried to be kind of a mixture. I mean, it was rated 15.
Yeah.
R for our listeners across the pond.
Yeah, all
Um,
of you guys. But
all of you, one person.
but yeah, so what I was going to say is that
Anyway,
BVS.
but yeah, so it was marketed towards adults, and like the tone was kind of this dark. So the visually it was dark, but it just wasn't quite a Zack Snyder visually dark
Yeah.
film. It was kind of some kind of mess, and then they had all these like terrible jokes, and like it didn't do it for me at all.
As I still think they should have carried on with the dark theme. In that people were always contrasting the MCU as like really light and happy, and the DC EU is quite dark. That's not even the case anymore, because especially in the case of Aquaman, not just in the color palette. Again, a film I haven't seen, but you can tell that they're making a very dramatic change in direction, purely just from like the suits and all that kind of stuff compared to the early like the muted color palette in which they used for Man of Steel. But they don't understand that people don't like MCU because everyone cracks jokes all the time, like "Ooh, I did a fart." But it's that they just make good stories,
but
with humor involved. As in Justice League was a mess. Did you watch Justice League?
I did watch Justice League, and it was terrible.
And
the jokes
it was
were
terrible, worse than BVS.
I laugh when I go to the cinema to see Marvel films. I don't laugh at the jokes. They're just different, and
You're right. It's very upsetting.
like all of them just fall flat.
However, one saving grace, which I will say, about Suicide Squad, is that the cameos by Ben Affleck's Batman and Ezra Miller's Flash were actually legitimately quite good.
Yeah.
As you know how the Flash came in, he just says, "No honor among thieves, eh?" And he just that was good. I don't particularly like his character in Justice League, but that was still good. And I'd also say that the Batman represented in Suicide Squad is the best Batman we've seen on the movie screen. In that he doesn't kill anyone for no reason. He's just that he saves Harley from drowning. He's just really badass. As in the scene, you know that scene where he takes down Deadshot and he just appears from like the sky. That was all done really well. The suit is all done really well. The scene at the post credit scene at the end where DC decided that they were going to cop out and just do a post credit scene. That Bruce Wayne and Amanda Waller relationship was done incredibly well. In that, again, we don't really read comics that much. You and I. You said that you read ones from the '60s when you're trying to flex. But I used to watch when I was younger, like the Justice League animated series. And they did very well the relationship between Amanda Waller and Bruce Wayne, in that they both ultimately won the same goal, but have varying different methodologies of how to get there. As in Bruce Wayne would never like trust in the Suicide Squad at all, and I think that when Amanda Waller says to Bruce Wayne, "You should you look tired. You should start working nights." That was good. I admit that was good.
Yeah, fine, but it's one line in an otherwise terrible film.
And I would rewatch Suicide Squad just for the brief Batman scenes, because he is really good in it, and that's an undeniable fact.
Yeah, I mean, to move on slightly, another big problem I have with the film. So, I mean, you said last week that you don't like that Marvel have created certain scenes just for the trailer to mislead people.
Yeah.
Well, Suicide Squad, in my opinion, had an even worse problem with that, which was that it was very, very, very obvious where scenes had been cut from the film. And like, to make that problem even worse, there were multiple scenes included in the trailer which didn't make it into the film, and so you'd be watching and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, like that scene from the trailer, which it should have been there, but it's not there, and like what's going on? It's really obvious that it should have been there."
Yeah, it was also just edited poorly in that regard as well. And a character would leave one scene and then enter the next scene with completely different motivations, and there was clearly a scene in the middle of that which had just been cut.
Exactly, and actually,
it doesn't work as a film at all.
Going back to, I've actually just remembered something even worse about the film than Will Smith's Suicide Squad one-liner, which is
Yeah.
what was that character called who like died instantly?
Slipknot. Yeah, I was about to mention that actually.
Because they all got their own intro except for Slipknot, and so as soon as Slipknot enters, you're like, okay, yeah, he's dying in the next 5 minutes, and sure enough,
yeah,
5 minutes
exactly.
later,
Everyone knew that he was going to die.
it was just,
and
it was. I don't
yeah,
get
exactly.
why they actually
We come to the scene where what was it? Captain Boomerang says this is all just a bluff from them, and we see this mysterious Slipknot character that we haven't had an introduction to. We're like, oh, what skill warrants him to be on this Suicide Squad? And well, bear in mind, I'm pretty sure in the comics, the Suicide Squad is supposed to be a fairly competent, a very competent team.
Yeah.
Tasked with doing like incredible missions and stuff. So Slipknot just fires his gun, which has a grappling hook on it. He flies away, and then his head explodes, and that is it. I think that leads us on to another main problem with the film, which is that it predominantly focuses on Harley and Will Smith's character.
Yep.
Harley and Deadshot's characters. I think Will Smith's good in the film. Apart from the Suicide Squad line,
I don't think he's that.
He is good. He's a character that I.
He wasn't that well developed though. It was quite a generic.
Yeah, that's true. But then you could kind of say in terms of like his story arc, you could say the same thing about lots of the MCU stuff.
Yeah,
like,
fine.
Like Doctor Strange, this arrogant guy learns to be less arrogant. But I think that Will Smith's character was quite good. He had that cool introduction. Where he shoots something. Then he later on has his shooting scenes. And in my opinion, what sets him apart as the best character of the film, not that that's saying much, is that you see quite a skilled marksman in him. You're kind of thinking, oh, he actually does have some some skills. As in everyone else has. Why is Harley Quinn on the team? She just carries around a baseball bat and is okay at hitting things.
So this is actually probably my biggest problem with the film. And I know we've just talked about in the Iron Man segment how it's all right not to adapt directly from the comics, but what didn't make sense at all with Suicide Squad was that I know in the comics, or I believe I haven't actually read any of them, but I know that Suicide Squad are used with very kind of normal threats. I think they just kind of go into countries and take down dictators and stuff like that. Whereas in this film, it makes no sense to have, as you say, like Harley Quinn is just someone with a baseball bat to go up against this big, like, kind of mystical threat. That's not at all a job for this group of people. I mean, like, they've got Diablo, and that's about it, really.
Diablo's not used in the film on purpose, in that, obviously at the end, his power is revealed. And you kind of understand why he doesn't really, because I think he's kind of afraid of the power or something. And that kind of is understandable. But then Captain Boomerang is basically like the Hawkeye equivalent on this team. However, he never does anything cool with his boomerangs. That's rewatching a couple scenes. He just uses them as knives, as melee weapons, which are just not cool to watch. It's like Hawkeye's had a few, cool, arrow type stuff over the course of his films. Captain Boomerang does nothing. Killer Croc does nothing. As in, they're all basically
it feels like they're in the wrong film because they're just not really at all equipped to go against the villain they're going against.
Yeah, it feels like they shouldn't really be there, or like they are, but they're just underused really massively.
Well, it's because Diablo's the only person who can actually take down the. I don't know what was going on with the villain, to be honest. Like it was all just a bit dumb.
Yeah, I didn't like that at all. The CGI
that guy
as well.
And that was kind of the big start to DC's CGI messes, which have appeared in, I think, every film since. I haven't seen Aquaman, so I don't know if it's also a CGI mess, but Wonder Woman and Justice League both ended in CGI messes. So.
Oh, you mean like how they always have a final fight scene, which has like
smoky
lightning, weird, like indiscreet things just flying about, and people not really knowing what happens. You're right, yeah.
Yeah. Big CGI villain.
Oh yeah, which done terribly as well. And that's not to say that the MCU haven't had terrible CGI. I actually think as of late, the CGI has been appalling. The CGI in Black Panther was appalling, and Spider-Man: Homecoming was appalling. The Spider-Man: Homecoming suit was horrible, and that's only because they just CGI'd like basically all of the Spider-Man scenes. Because you know how they're making the Spider-Man Far From Home suit. I mean, the Spider-Man Far From Home, which is releasing next year. They actually designed a good suit, which you can see like set photos for. To all of our listeners, I'd encourage you now to Google up what the suit looks like. The suit is actually a really well-made suit, and probably one of the best live-action Spider-Man suits that we've ever seen. When it comes to film, it's going to be terrible because the CGI is terrible. CGI is terrible in like the Iron Man armors post probably Iron Man 3, I'd say.
The Tony without his helmet on in Civil War.
Yeah, thank you. It was horrible.
Bizarre.
I think I know why. With the Iron Man armor specifically, they've got this weird sheen to them now, which they didn't used to. As in terms of design-wise, as in, you know how the Civil War suit has that kind of weird shininess about it. That is what the old ones didn't have. The old ones used to be kind of matte, and but we're kind of digressing from the whole Suicide Squad thing. But it's just a terrible film. Batman's really good in it. Ben Affleck is really good in it. As he really saves the film, but he's only in it for a total of 5 minutes.
He's a cameo.
Exactly. In total, he's in it for 5 minutes.
It doesn't count.
But that is the best representation of Batman we've ever seen. Do you not agree?
I don't know about that. I mean, the Dark Knight trilogy is kind of just conspicuously sitting there, and I do like Batfleck, but
no. Okay, but maybe that's something we should discuss on another episode, actually.
But I think we have probably reached our time.
I think we have.
So, thank you to everyone for listening. Going to do a desperate plug here. Please do like, follow, subscribe, whatever.
God, it's so cringe. Actually, and this is our last episode for 2018.
That's true. We kind of forgot to mention that the reason we did Iron Man and Iron Man 3 thing was because it's like Christmas, and Iron Man 3 is a Christmas movie.
Oh yeah. It's
or
a
at least
shame
a
that,
movie set at Christmas.
Recording 5 days later after Christmas. So,
but never mind.
Yeah, never mind. So, all of December's Christmas. I'm sure we all agree.
Exactly.
All of December's Christmas.
It's 12 days of Christmas, actually, you know.
Actually, to be fair, Iron Man 3 was also released in May. It was released in May.
that was strange.
And I think apparently that's part of like the kind of Shane Black typically always sets his films in Christmas.
God, that's so true. Huh.
Exactly. Yeah, Josh, you should have come in with that interesting fact, but it's fine. Actually, am I going to be here for the next episode? Should we give an explanation as to why I might not be here for some of the next episodes being recorded? So I'm going to be off in India, for a month. So I'm going to leave the podcast under the leadership of Josh and Rob. I mean, they're probably going to make a Game of Thrones episode.
We probably will, yeah. We are seriously digressing. So we seriously are.
Yeah, we seriously are.
Happy New Year to everyone.
And thank you to all our listeners.
Congratulations for making it this far through the podcast.
Please tweet in. Actually, please tweet in with any questions. Actually, are we doing that?
I mean, it's worth a shot. Probably not going to happen, but
okay.
If you have any questions that you would like us to answer on this podcast, please tweet them to us at SOT Podcast.
And also do #StayOnTrack.
Cool.
Okay.
So we will see everyone next week.